During this video segment, I will go over the constituents area within Donor Trak. The constituents is a very robust area where you can keep track of all the information you need to related to your constituents, supporters, individuals, married couples, and the like. So if I go to the constituents area, it will bring up all of our constituents alphabetized, but I can search for them by either first name or last name or even a combination of the two. So if I just do last name, it'll bring the Vanderburgs first. Let me go ahead and click search, and it shows the Vanderburgs, and then it goes to something that's close to that. And I'm going to go ahead and log or go to John and Johanna Vanderburg. Notice that her maiden name is Boss. So in the primary area, we can keep track of the first name, last name, maiden name, if it's applicable. In this case, it's John, so I can leave that blank. The marital status, date of birth, anniversary, and so forth. The employer name actually connects back to the business database. So if you want that information, some organizations don't really care about that, and really all these fields are optional. Obviously last and first name is very relevant, but some of this other information may not be relevant or something that you need to know. If there are fields that you wish you knew about this person that we don't have here, you can always add that into the notes area. So we're going to work our way down the tabs here, or the links on the left side. Next, let's go to spouse. And so in this case, this is all information that pertains to Johanna. Notice her maiden name is Boss, and that's why that shows up here. Her date of birth, phone, email. Notice it doesn't have marital status and doesn't have anniversary date, because that's going to be hopefully the same as what's in the primary area. So you only have to enter that twice. Both the primary and the spouse can have their own phone number, their own email address, and so forth. And again, there's a notes area for the spouse. Next, we'll go to children. So this is where you can add in your children. And if I click add, notice it defaults with the last name, which is great. You can override it if you need to. So let's go ahead and put in Chris, and let's change actually that date of birth to 2010. You can put their graduating class, so the class of 2029 if you want to. I'll just leave that blank for now. You see that it was added into a couple of these. Notice that it automatically will show the current age too based on the birth date itself. If you have a child that comes of age, that they're no longer in the house, and you want to treat them as their own constituent record, notice that there is a convert here. So if I click convert, it says, are you sure you want to do this? I'll say yes. And now notice Timothy Vanderburg is his own constituent. So let's go back again. I'd like to bring up John and Johanna Vanderburg again as we are working our way down that record. So that was the children area. Notice now that that child is no longer in here. It's his own record. Also, you can delete out a child if need be, if you make a mistake, and you can update a child if you need to. For instance, maybe I know that this is the class of 2031. I didn't do the calculations, but anyway. The next item over is the attributes area, and this is where you can keep track of attributes, things that are specific to this married couple. So this married couple wants to receive these publications, the Central Focus and the Crusader Weekly. If I want to also add this BAC School News, I can do that and click Save Changes. And at the top, what it's showing is the attributes that are attached to this married couple. On the bottom, it shows all the attributes. We call these attributes, and then they're categorized with what we call categories. These are completely customizable by each individual school, and that is actually going to be in Admin Constituent Attribute List. So this is where you can add categories, and once you add categories, you can add in your attributes to those categories. So let's go ahead and go back to John and Johanna. So again, You can select them so it's very easy for you later on to run a query and say, I want to find all the individuals, all the constituents that are basketball supporters. In other words, have this attribute checked. The next item down is the reminders and notes. So it is truly that. It's two different things. There are reminders that are date driven. So for instance, if you want to set up a reminder for this week, Thursday, that I contact, let's say, Johanna, wishing her the best in her upcoming surgery, or something like that. You can go ahead and add those reminders. I go to the bottom and click Save Changes. And so where that will appear is it'll appear right here, but obviously you're not going to see that. But on the dashboard, there will be that reminder. And then once the 26th has passed, that will fall back off again. And you can click on that to come right back to this area. So that's the reminders. You can also set up notes. And you only can have one reminder at a time, whereas the notes are historical. So you can keep adding more and more notes, and those will automatically appear so you can look back at the history of those notes as well. If you want to delete any of these out, you can do that. So let's say I want to delete out that note for some reason. But notice it defaults to today, and I can put in the subject, put in the note itself, and click Save, and it'll hang on to those forever as long as you don't delete those. The next item down is relationships, and this is very useful, especially for new development directors. If you're taking over a position from someone else, it's very helpful. Maybe I don't know all the relationships in the school. Who's married to who, who's a child to who, and so forth. So it's very valuable for you to keep track of this information so that if others have to pick up where you left off, they can see that information. Remember that we made Casey a child? And so notice it automatically set up this relationship as well. It says John and Johanna are the parents of Casey Vanderberg. And by the way, if I click on Casey Vanderberg and go to his relationships, notice it shows that Casey is the son or daughter. So when you set up those relationships, it'll actually show those both ways. So let's go back here once again. If you want to add a relationship, you can say John is the sibling to, let's say, Carol Anima. So if I say primary, that would be Ken. So I'll say spouse. So it's saying John is the sibling of Carol Anima because she is considered the spouse in this case, and let's click Add. So again, now if I would go to Carol Anima's record, you would see that it would show that same relationship. Carol is the sibling. It looks like that was in here already, so let's go ahead and delete that out. So that's the relationships area where you can keep track of all those relationships between this constituent and any other constituent in the constituents database. The contact information is where you can keep track of their address information, and you can actually also put in a secondary address. So for instance, if they're a snowbird, or they go south in the winter, or they go north in the summer, we call this a seasonal address. So you can put the date. So in other words, from October 15 to about March 15, we're going to use this address for John and Johanna instead of this. And what's nice is if you do a mail merge or a mailing or mailing labels, it'll automatically use this address instead for John and Johanna for any dates between October 15 and March 15. The next item down is the gifts and pledge schedules. So this is where you can keep track of the giving for these individuals. So you can add a gift. Gifts are typically going to be one-time gifts. So if it's $1,000 with this check number on this date, and I'm going to go ahead and you can apply it to an existing pledge schedule, or you can say it's going to be part of this campaign and this appeal, and we'll save the gift. And so now that's just a one-time gift. You can also set up pledge schedules, and if I click Add Pledge Schedules, again, you can choose your campaign, your appeal. So let's choose something a little bit different here. So we'll choose this campaign, this appeal, and let's say that we're going to give $3,000 starting on this date, or this is our pledge date. Do they want reminders? Sure, we'll say so. And let's say that they want to do this semi-annually over 3 years, so 6 payments. Oops, I guess this is asking for the initial. So let's say that the initial payment date is going to be on November 1st, and we want to spread this out over 6 payments, which would be 3 years. So we'll click Save. Notice it automatically does the calculations for you. You can override the dates and the amounts if you want to, and we'll go ahead and save that. If you want to see that pledge schedule, you can see it right here. And notice that it shows the information. There are no payments yet at this point. And then finally, the constituent tools for this person. This is if there are major life changes for them. For instance, if there's a death in the family, maybe John passes away, so what we'd like to do is we'd like to switch the primary and spouse and make Johanna the primary. And we could delete out spouse data. Probably we could do that, or we could just make them note that they have passed away. We can make a spouse a new constituent record. So for instance, if there's a divorce situation, or maybe they left the school and they're no longer giving, we could make that entire record inactive. If they haven't made any pledges or any donations, you could delete out the record as well. But as long as there's any financial data, you really can't delete them out, and that's where you would make them inactive instead. If they're inactive, you can still find them, but they're not going to just show up right within your list itself. So this now concludes this video on the constituents area in Donor Trak.